So what we're looking at here is the offline verifier. So these are meant to, once you already have a label printed, either because they've been out in the field or because you are trying to set up a printer or a laser marker or whatever it might be. This is going to be your real analytical tool. It can be used spot checking as well, but the real power comes when you have time to really spend time with your code a little bit. So on the first page, you have the option to really set it up for what type of inspection you're doing. You'll see besides the GS1 and the HIBIC, you have just about anything you could think of for regulatory codes here. In this case, I've said that we're in table 1. So you can see all of the number of different tables that exist, as well as telling it not to generate a warning or to generate a warning, but don't change the grade if it's out of spec. Ultimately, what you're doing here is setting up the parameters for which level of scanning is going to happen to this code. Is it on a case pack? Is it going to be in point of sale? Because it really changes the size and requirements of the code here. So once you have this set up, we can go over to the grading tab, and I have some labels that I've had with me for some time. And you can see on here, we have an A code. As Dustin went over, there's a bunch of different categories, and you can see them right here with details. We can also look down and get even more details than you would get in the inline and actually see our X and Y print growth, meaning are any of the squares or elements here in the code too large or too small for what we're looking at in either direction. Again, which would allow you to make changes on the fly and really set up equipment or check if equipment made it back from the field and had damage. It's got the nice bright green, so an operator that doesn't know anything that's going on is going to be able to look at that and know that it is a quality label. But then we get into the more important things for an offline verifier like this, like being able to use this and zoom in on a code. So now we can start to see what looks like a easily perfect label. While it passes all of the tests, you can tell that maybe the sizing of our printer isn't perfect. Maybe we need this to be more crisp. Maybe we don't. Another important thing that we can see here is we're actually encroaching on our quiet zone on this. So what that is around the outside of a code, you need to have one extra space the size of any of your elements outside here. And so by zooming in here and looking, we can tell that this square is bigger than this space. So when creating this label, the text should actually shift a little bit further right than where it is now. It's not enough to affect our overall grade, but that's something that if we want to make sure that we aren't causing any more problems or don't introduce more problems later, that this is going to give us a little more room for error. You can also see, like we saw with the numbers, there's a little bit of overprinting going on. You can see with this square that it's a little bit bigger with that element than the space next to it. So we're overprinting, meaning we're putting too much ink down than what we need to do. Typically, this could be caused because we're having adherence problems with the labels because they're not matched properly. And so we're having to apply more heat in order to print the label, or the settings have just gone off. The light of the printer, the ambient temperature, all these things can affect our printing. So these are the kind of setup tools that we can use here. Then we can even go one step further and look at a full 2D analysis. And I'll pull this over here on the screen once it's completed. And you can see that this will actually go into every cell here and tell us how we're doing. It's a very nicely printed code. That's why I have it. But you can see that it gives a grade on not just the overall code, but each individual element. Again, if you're not the expert that spent the last 20 years trying to be perfect about knowing why codes are bad, this is going to show you right where that problem is on the code. And if it actually is causing degrade, worse grades on your code, you'll see where it is, and then you can make action to make your changes necessary instead of just hunting and pecking for an answer, trying to print a label and making a change and seeing if it's better. That's not what we want. We want to do more an analytical approach to this. And then we talked about this last piece to close out, but the structure analysis with an offline verifier. So you'll see this, like we talked about, is actually going to break out all that data. When we look at our grading tab, we can see this is what's actually encoded in the barcode. If you were to scan this with your cell phone, this is what it looks like. It's just a string of data. I know we see the parentheses in the printed text, but that's not part of the way you encode this. You do have a function 1 character, which is much like pressing the F1 key on your keyboard in ASCII at the beginning to tell it, hey, I have a formatted code coming up. But the rest of the structure is all just based on where those identifiers are, the 01, the 10, the 17, the 21. It tells us where all of those data breaks are going to be. So again, if you had no idea what setting this up would look like, this is where you have to go to see this. You need a machine to tell you what the machine is reading. So just a quick look at these. I always have one of these with me. You're always welcome to send Dustin or I a label, and we can do a quick analysis for you. We're here to help share our knowledge and make sure, everybody's taken care of. And honestly, especially when it comes to medical, we've heard from lots of customers, and it really kind of warms our hearts that, these regulations are what make sure that, people are getting good products in a timely manner. And, we at Omron do our best to try to be part of that solution out there. So thanks for taking the time to run through all of this with us. If I'm going to leave anybody with anything, please remember your label is your product. So put just as much effort into the quality of the label as you are into the quality of the product you're producing.